Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome in for another episode of Under Review, coming at you live from the 143 with episode 143.
There we go. We have officially made it. 143. We had a doozy this week. Cowboys won in dramatic fashion at Pittsburgh. For the most part, we were pretty surprised. Weren't expecting a good week. Lots of injuries to be dealt with, and whenever we needed to go down and get a touchdown there at the end, that's exactly what we did, and we're not used to seeing that, to be honest with you. As Cowboys fans, came down to a 4th and goal, and Dak delivers to Jalen Tolbert, who had himself a bit of an evening. So good for him.
Yeah, actually, we'll just get rolling with the stat of the week, brought to you by Andrews Logistics. It's actually about that game. And it was actually about what I was about to say, so I'm just going to go ahead and say the stat. Dak Prescott is the only player alive to throw a touchdown pass or 2 touchdown passes, same game, on different days. Because Eastern time, the game ended at 1:30 a.m., 1 a.m., ended at 1 a.m. Dak threw a touchdown pass on Sunday, and he threw a touchdown pass on Monday in the same game. Nick, how about it? It was a late game.
Very interesting. That is thanks to a weather delay at the beginning of the game. So he makes a little bit of history there.
He does.
Your player of the week, Jamar Chase, finally having himself a good week. Put up almost 200 yards, had 10 catches for 193 yards and 2 touchdowns. But the Bengals ultimately would lose still to the Ravens, but they had the chance to win it, so you can't really feel bad for them.
Yeah, that was a great game. Actually, there were a bunch of great games this week, but especially in the 12 o'clock slot on Sunday. But for sure, Ravens-Bengals was one of the great games this weekend. We just talk about that since we're on it. A lot of offense and pretty much no defense. Just a dogfight going back and forth between Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson making plays. And in the end, it came down to the holder for Cincinnati fumbling kind of the ball around a little bit, leading to a missed field goal, which would have won the Bengals the game. Ravens come out. Derrick Henry puts them in the red zone, and then they just first down, kick a field goal, win the game, and that's all she wrote. But I feel like they always have some pretty good games between them, the Bengals and the Ravens.
Usually a good interdivisional game there between the Ravens and the Bengals. I think the quarterbacks combined for 9 touchdowns. Joe Burrow finally had himself a good week. He actually threw for 392 yards, and Lamar had 348. But the Bengals still find themselves in the hole, which is what they've been trying to avoid.
1 and 4.
They fall to 1 and 4.
It's not great.
So we'll see what the future holds for them.
It's going to be very hard to make the playoffs starting out 1 and 4. I will say. Now, if anybody can do it 1 and 4, it's probably them. But it's going to be tough on them. But they did it to themselves. Their defense. Joe Burrow came out and said, "We're not playing like a championship team," and what he really meant was their defense isn't playing like a championship team right now. The Bengals are putting up like 30 points a game, but they're letting the other team score 40. So their defense looks awful, and they need to do something about it because they're really wasting the Joe Burrow era right now.
The good juice, and then we got Jamar Chase there, and they kind of wasted that whole wide receiver room that they had there honestly, that entire offensive core where they had T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, Jamar Chase, and Joe Mixon, all of those guys in the same skill position room. But now a few of those guys have graduated, but you still have
and T's going to be leaving.
T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, but I don't think T is going to be around for much longer, and you don't really have a running back. But a doozy on Thursday night between the Falcons and the Buccaneers.
What a great game!
What a great game! Take an overtime win. Kirk Cousins throws for over 500 yards, and leads the Falcons to an overtime victory over their division rival, the Buccaneers, who have also been having themselves a good year with Baker Mayfield.
Bucks and Falcons was probably the best Thursday night football game I've ever seen. Regular season wise, of course. Actually, there are no Thursday night football games in the playoffs. So best Thursday night game I've ever seen. And it's just one of those things, man, where you think the Falcons are down and out, and then they just get the ball back with a minute left. One, Kirk Cousins threw a pick that should have ended the game for the Bucks with a minute 40 left, throws a pick, and the Bucks get a holding call on their drive that forces them to punt the ball. So Kirk Cousins leads the Falcons all the way down the field for young Kwaku, who struggled a lot that game, to tie it up with a field goal, last-second field goal, just like he did the week before to win it. He ties it up. Overtime, effortlessly drives down the field and hits Kadarius Hodges for, I think, like a 40-something yard touchdown. He just turned on the Jets and scored for him. Kirk O'Chains is really making a name for himself down there in Atlanta.
Really turning the table on primetime Kirk. A lot of people were actually tweeting there's primetime Kirk whenever he threw an interception to what everyone thought would have ended the game, but they ended up coming back and winning. But he's found himself a home, maybe possibly here in Atlanta.
He signed there for a while.
Kind of revamping the Falcons as we see the NFC South get a little bit better as quarterbacks in Atlanta and Tampa Bay up the play there. But
it'll be a tight one for sure coming down the pipe between Tampa Bay and Atlanta.
Definitely a lot better than what I think we were expecting.
Yeah.
But, good to see, because these are some bad teams that have been bad for a little bit, finally playing a little bit better.
Colts, Jags, another kind of shootout, high offense, no defense. Jags get their first win of the season. They are 1-4, and none of us feel good about their 1-4. Honestly, Joe Flacco came out and played himself a great game. He had 350-plus passing yards and 3 touchdowns. You can't ask for much more out of your backup quarterback coming in starting a game. Joe Flacco's playing like he's in his prime right now, just like he did last season. But the Jags come out and they barely get the win, 37-34. I hated to see that, but it did happen, so they're 1-4.
Yeah, Joe Flacco's been there, done that, played a lot of years in the NFL, been a backup for a little bit, so he knows how to play some good football. In the end, their defense just couldn't make enough stops to win the game. And, we're not the biggest fans of Trevor Lawrence over here, so we don't necessarily like to see the success there in Jacksonville. Bills-Texans.
What a game. Another great
nail-biter that comes down to a last-second field goal from Kymie Fairbairn, the Texans kicker, who drills a 59-yarder as time expires to win the game. That one was pretty highly anticipated just because you have Stephon Diggs going up against Josh Allen, and Josh Allen did not have a week that we're used to seeing from him. Only threw 131 yards and 1 passing TD.
I want to say, I'm pretty sure Stephon Diggs out-receivered the entire receiving core for the Bills because, this is obviously not running backs and tight ends included, but he did have more receiving yards himself than all the wide receivers combined for the Bills. So they got something to figure out in Buffalo. I think they were able to kind of wow some people at the beginning of the season by playing some teams that, maybe weren't that good, like Jacksonville, and just running up the score on them. But after seeing them play Baltimore and now Houston and seeing them play some good defenses, I think they have a reality check. They got a reality check, and they need a receiver as well. And a lot of people are saying Devontae Adams would fit their needs very well right now.
Maybe, but we'll see what they go after. I think they were able to just run over some bad teams, like you said. They're at the beginning. They got to play Jacksonville and Miami. and just stomped on both of them. But then whenever they went up against a real defense like the Ravens, they got blasted. They only scored 10 points, and they gave up 35. And then the Texans, who are going to be a contender this season, they fall short against. And so they might have some figuring out to do, especially in that wide receiver room, just because I like Keon Coleman, but I don't think he's going to he can't be your guy.
Yeah,
Same
you can't
with
lean on him.
Shakir and whoever else they've got there, Mac Hollins, whatever you want to say. You need a true surefire wide receiver one. They got a good running back in James Cook. I think he's shown last year and thus far this year that he's a good, decent offensive weapon, but you just got to shore up that wide receiver room.
Yeah, Cardinals, Niners. The Cardinals kick a late game-winning field goal to beat the 49ers. The 49ers, they have not been looking like the 49ers we've been expecting to see this season. They've been dealing with a few injuries, but mainly just Christian McCaffrey. And, they should be better than this. They have not been playing up to the level that everybody thought they'd be playing right now. I'm not sure whose fault that is. I'm not sure what's going on, but I will say, like, Brandon Ayuk's not looking great. He, didn't practice all offseason, and I think it's showing a lot. But Brock Purdy and his receivers need to get on the same page.
They fall to a surprising 2-3, and I just say surprising because that's not something we're used to seeing from the 49ers. By this point of the season, they're usually looking like that championship Super Bowl contending type of team, but we just haven't seen it at all this year. Brock Purdy threw 2 interceptions, which is not really like him at all. And Jordan Mason putting in work, producing once again. He had another great week, 89 yards.
He's been a good backup.
He finally did have a good week this week as he went for 147. But they did give up a 50-yard rushing touchdown to Kyler Murray, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, anytime you give up a big rushing touchdown to a quarterback like that, doesn't look great on the defense for sure.
Yeah, and I was trying to look at Marvin Harrison, and that was the thing, is they didn't even – like, Marvin Harrison was their best guy, and that's not who they were getting beat by. It was Michael Wilson.
Yep. Okay. Credit to the Cardinals for finding a way. They were locking up Marvin Harrison, to credit to the Cardinals there.
Yeah, and so that defense that we're seeing that smothered people in the past is looking
a little thin.
Pretty grim, some might say.
Yep. Obviously, it's early in the season. We'll talk about the Monday night game before we go to the big one that happened last night. But Saints-Chiefs, not much to see or say here. The Chiefs just finding ways to win without their guys. As Rashee Rice is down, Isaiah Pacheco's down. Doesn't matter. Travis Kelce had a good night tonight. They're finally working him into the offense. And then Kareem Hunt had a great night as well. He had over 100 yards rushing. Defense really shut the Saints down. Since the Saints beat the Cowboys 3 weeks ago, they're 0-3 after that. So we appreciate them bringing their best against us and then losing to everybody else. But the Saints don't look great anymore. Everybody overreacted after they beat us, but they're not looking great anymore.
Yeah, they went 40 back-to-back weeks 1 and 2, and everyone was ready to crown them the champions of the NFC or whatever. But it's back to earth, back to reality. Juju Smith-Schuster getting involved, putting up 130 yards.
Yeah, he had a great game.
Obviously, you don't know what this Chiefs offense is going to look like as they're losing some key guys, but they do what they do best, and that is find ways to win every single week. The offense just doesn't look as flashy as what we're used to seeing. They're not putting up insane numbers. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes still threw for 330 yards, but he didn't throw any touchdowns. But nonetheless, they're just finding ways to win the game And so you got to credit to them. That's what the great teams do.
It's hard to win games in the NFL, and you got to give a lot of credit to Kansas City and Minnesota right now for being the only two undefeated teams. Obviously, Minnesota went into London and took care of business against the Jets, and that's hard to do. So whatever way, both of them found ways to win this week, as neither of their games were pretty, but they both remain undefeated. So credit to them. All right. Let's talk about the Sunday night football game, early Monday morning football game between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Dallas Cowboys, as Dallas traveled to Pittsburgh, played in a very hostile environment in some pretty rough conditions, mainly dealing with a lot of mist at the beginning of the game, and obviously the field was just soaked the entire time. You could tell there was a lot of slipping around going, especially with the ball. I don't think there was a whole lot of ball security, but it was a tough, hard-fought game. Actually, someone today told me we out-Steelered the Steelers, which I really like there. We kind of played some hard-nosed, tough running football. One, run defense was great, and then Rico Dowdle for us on the other side was just great. So this was your classic hard-nosed football game, and the Cowboys just came out on top.
I was going to say, kind of found two offensive weapons. I don't know about found, but it just more like came out of nowhere. Mm-hmm. You know, we had been struggling with the run game all year, weren't really expecting much from it there, but Rico Dowdle has a good game, and he took on a lot of we kind of gave him, or actually we gave him 20 carries this week. You know, in the past we had seen Zeke maybe take the primary carries, or they were splitting it evenly, but now we had Rico taking most of the carries, and then also Jalen Tolbert, he's getting out there, and he was our number one receiver on that day. And then that Span Ford guy had himself a couple nice catches. Hunter Lipke had a key catch there at the end of the game that went for like, what did he go for on that one? Yeah, one catch for 18 yards, and that was at the end of the game to put us, almost to the goal line.
Yeah, inside the 10 at least.
He put us inside the 10 or whatever that was, so way to get himself involved. We've been getting Cavante Turpin. He's a small, speedy, just quick twitch kind of guy, and he's been getting involved a lot. As we'd seen, all he really was before was just a return man, but now it's trying to get the ball in his hands offensively and letting him, beat you at that speed. But if we can continue with this run game that we have, I think we'll be a little bit more successful. Obviously, the points aren't there, but we're winning games.
Yeah, that's all that matters. Win them how you can. Pittsburgh's defense is pretty much, the greatest part of their team. T.J. Watt, and their secondary is really good. But so you got to. I don't think any of us came in expecting to score a lot of points on the Pittsburgh defense, but we did a great job of holding their offense, getting stops when we needed to, and then also, obviously, Dak didn't play great. But when it really mattered at the end of the game, when we needed him to make a game-winning drive down the field, something we're not used to seeing him do, he actually came through, and 4th and goal from the 4, found Jalen Tolbert, who had been injured on the previous play, came back in, held onto the ball in the end zone for the winning touchdown catch, had us here, me and Nick, going nuts. And I'm sure every other true Cowboys fan who stayed up and watched till the end.
On the edge of our seat. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Wasn't the prettiest game from our quarterback. Obviously had 2 interceptions and a fumble. But what we can appreciate, yes, we left, that was one thing, is we left a ton of points out on the field. We left at least 9. Because you had the blocked field goal, you had the pick in the end zone, and then when he fumbled.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's just saying I'm saying 9, I'm just saying field goals because that's, if you're not going to get 6, you can at least, kick one for 3.
Yep.
And that's something we didn't do. But when it came down to it and we needed a score, that's exactly what Dak got. Also, underrated play from him, I think, was on that 3rd and goal when Rico Dowdle gets the ball punched out right at the cusp of the goal line. And as it's fluttering around, he turns and immediately dives on it. Not saying that was like the greatest thing ever, but I just think that was kind of an
Oh, it was a
underrated
heads-up play for
our
sure.
quarterback was having the
That could have been the game.
wherewithal
Yeah.
to dive on that and then secure it, because so many times in that situation you see him flop on it and kind of kick it around and punch it 5 yards.
Or just not even go for it because you're the quarterback. So
right. Just knee-jerk reaction was just lay the body out, dive on the football. Love to see it. And then next play finds Jalen Tolbert open in the end zone. People are – and now the media is pushing the narrative – or actually two narratives, really. The first one I was going to mention was the CD versus Dak narrative. There's that right after Dak threw that pick in the end zone, CD goes over to the sideline and says something to him. And so now everyone's trying to make it out like there's strife there between CD and Dak, and there may or may not be, but
I don't think so.
Trying to make it sound like, we got a lot to figure out locker room wise between those two.
You read his lips. He says jump ball 4, jump ball or whatever. He's just telling him to throw it up. I mean, he's not yelling at him. I mean, he's probably yelling so Dak would hear him, but he wasn't yelling at him. Like, I don't think there's. I think the media is trying to make that a little bit more than it is.
I think they're just blowing it out of proportion. Yeah, I mean, obviously he's kind of chirping at him a little bit, but I mean, that's nothing new. He doesn't want his quarterback to throw a pick. Wow, what a surprise!
And this might be the second one you were talking about. Are you talking? I feel like I know where you're going. Where the media says that we survived that game.
Yeah, just that they're immediately ready to kill all the Steelers hype that we had, because they started out 3-0. Now they're 3-2 after losing back-to-back weeks. But they were trying to make it sound like the Steelers were really, really good at first, and that they might do some damage there in the AFC. But now, they're kind of looking at them as washed, and now it's just
that's what
Russell Wilson going to be healthy or whatever. And I mean, it's just you gotta give us credit. We didn't go and survive. Okay, we went down there and we took the game. All right, because that's what happens when you make that fourth quarter game-winning drive.
Yeah, well, you come in and say, "Oh, Dallas survived that game." First of all, we're on the road in Pittsburgh. We're underdogs. Okay, so you win that game.
Everyone was expecting us to lose.
You win that game, you don't survive. If you come in as underdogs, you don't survive with a win. Surviving would be you come in heavily favored and you barely win by 1 or 2. You get lucky at the end or something. No, we came in. Dak led the game-winning touchdown drive. We came in. We actually took that game from Pittsburgh. Thank you very much. I'm not saying we're going to win the Super Bowl. I'm not saying we're going to go to the playoffs. But you're not going to tell me we went in there and we survived the game against Pittsburgh.
No, absolutely not, because that's just not what happened. Maybe I don't want to say we're there yet, but maybe we might be turning a corner.
I think games like that really help. Could help get the ball rolling. I think, but we've got a tough one in Detroit this next week. Our next 6 weeks are going to be tough, obviously without the bye week. But we've got like Detroit. This is out of order, but Detroit, Philadelphia, Washington. We've got some more AFC North, I think. Bengals, something like that. We've just got the next 6 weeks are going to be a gauntlet, is what everybody's talking about.
Well, and the other thing too is we've been dropping like flies on the injury list. It was, we lost so many the week before and during practice this entire past week, and then we still lost a few on Sunday night during the game. And so the defense is credit to the defense for only giving up 17, because we were pretty much missing our best pass rushers. And then also we still had some guys drop out of there. But it just that is a little bit scary because they can go out and get one, but we need them to play consistently well
Right.
for a couple weeks before we get time to get our starters back. Good week from Dallas
Great
and
win.
the NFL.
Yep.
All those 12 o'clock games were extremely good, so that's something that we can appreciate here as
Great weekend of
football
sports.
fans.
We didn't even talk about it, but college football had a great weekend. The MLB had a great weekend. The NFL had a great weekend. Just great weekend of sports all around.
Very true. So, here's like to end our shows on under review. I've brought you a quote from the Don Shula. He said, "The superior man blames himself. The inferior man blames others." That's the truth.
That is the truth. We thank you for tuning in this week, and we will see you next week with another episode of Under Review.